Welcome to HIT241. This is Cindy Johnson, your instructor for CPT coding. Today we're going to review the syllabus and go over a couple of things that I think are very important. All of my contact information is here on the first page. This course introduces the student to CPT coding and helps you master it well enough to pass the National RHIT exam. To code correctly, it's essential that students understand the medical record documentation is your source of information to support a code, and you will use your knowledge of medical terminology, anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology when you're interpreting medical documentation. This may require you to look at Google Images or YouTube videos, things to help familiarize you with outpatient procedures, ambulatory surgery procedures, and the different nuances that accompany those. The assignment schedule is a separate document and should be downloaded and printed for frequent reference. The course is loaded. There's a lot in it. You have reading assignments in your textbook. The publisher provides PowerPoints for your textbook, and those are available as a PDF so you can print them. I have created PowerPoints and recorded podcasts for you to watch that accompany the publisher's materials. There are exercises for you to complete which have due dates, and there are exams throughout the semester which also have specific availability. Everything is listed on the assignment schedule, and that should really drive your calendar as far as what is due when. On the content page, the course is divided into weeks, and each week you see where the PowerPoints that are available for you to watch and or download, the instructor's PowerPoints for you to watch and or download, and the recorded podcast of the instructor's PowerPoints. I make a point of telling you this about a grade of 0 is given if you just copy and paste an answer from the answer key. The exercises have answer keys that are released when you submit your homework. I do that so that you have immediate feedback after you complete a coding exercise and you can see where you went wrong. But if you submit a blank or a nearly blank homework submission just so you can have access to the answer key to copy and paste the answers, you will not get the full point value. That is considered cheating in my book. So you have to be able to give an explanation of what you're doing and show a true effort that you've attempted to find a code, even if you get it wrong, that you've made the effort. Medical dictionaries would probably be helpful, anatomy and physiology text, but I spend more time going to Google Images or YouTube videos looking at various procedures to understand them. You do whatever makes you most comfortable. A textbook and a code book are required in this course. The code book is what it sounds like, all the codes that are CPT codes. The textbook, this is a new textbook for us. I've chosen it because it's a little less expensive than the one that's been used in the past, although the cost of these books is just crazy. We have no control over that, as I'm sure you probably realize, but we are conscious of it and we try to consider it when we're assigning text for classes. The learning outcomes of the course are listed here, as well as the specific outcomes for the specific exercises and or exams. These competencies are things that AHIMA or KHIM, which is our accreditation body, requires of us in order to offer an accredited HIT program. You are eligible to sit for the RHIT exam at the conclusion of this associate degree because we are an accredited program. Learner expectations in 241. Many students, when they come into the program, tell me they want to be a coder. I was the program chair for quite a few years, and I've probably interviewed most of you as you've gone through the program at one point or another. Wanting to be a coder and being willing to do the work to become a coder and pay your dues before you actually get a coding job are the different things that come into play on your decision to become a coder. We'll start with this course. CPT coding is one of several coding courses that we offer at ACC. Your ICD-10 coding courses are 220, 221, 231, and 241 here is your CPT coding course. The National or HIT exam has questions that pertain to each of those 3 code sets, so you really have to understand the format and structure of the different code sets and how you might use them, as well as the importance of applying guidelines. I cannot overestimate the importance of guidelines. Too often students try to just find a code and are so happy when they find a code, but you haven't completed the work unless you've applied the appropriate guideline to that code assignment. For this course, I'm estimating a minimum of 8 to 12 hours per week for you to do all the reading, watch the podcast, the PowerPoints, and complete your coding exercises, get your answer key, and correct your coding exercises for the full points for the Dropbox exercises. One of the biggest reasons that students are not successful in a coding course is because not enough time is dedicated to complete everything that needs to be done to learn coding. Coding is hard. It is like learning a foreign language, and unless you give it the time that it requires, you will not be successful. I am willing to meet with you, do whatever I can to help you be successful, but nothing I can do is a substitute for the time that you will spend in that code book, becoming familiar with it, learning how to navigate it, learning how to apply the guidelines, and completing all of your homework. This minimum of 8 to 12 hours depends on your history. If you've worked with medical documentation and are somewhat familiar with it, it may take you a little less time. But if you are brand new to healthcare and brand new to reading medical records, it will take you the upper end of that, the 12 hours and maybe a little bit more, to do everything that has to be done. I'll make a point here also that we are preparing you for the national exam, the RHIT exam. If it is your professional goal to become a coder, it's going to require you to take additional courses, self-study on your own, additional work experience, anything you can do to prepare for a career in coding. The CCS credential is one of the coding credentials that a graduate can earn with the RHIT degree. It consists of questions and case scenarios from both ICD-10 CM, PCS, and CPT. And I encourage you to go to the AHIMA website and look at this coding credential if that's something that you want to do, and look at the eligibility, what qualifies you to sit for the CCS exam. I'll talk here just for a bit about professionalism, and I have not been disappointed in the professional level of my students. And I think that's because it's my expectation that students' actions will demonstrate their professionalism, whether they're completing a requirement of the class or their personal things you say in the discussion board, the respectful way you ask questions or comment on one another's post. Those are all evidence of professionalism. And just to make my point that it's just important that you demonstrate professionalism everywhere you go at every level. I'm often asked to give professional references for students, and you better believe that a student's demonstration of professionalism is one of the things that I look at, because it tells me you are dedicated to being a professional. And along with that, sometimes it can be so frustrating when you're learning coding, and if you express that frustration inappropriately, either through the discussion board or in an email to me, it will be dealt with. It is important that you understand that it is frustrating and there's appropriate ways to deal with frustration. It is fine to ask questions. I want you to ask questions. Email me or call me and say, help me understand how you got to that code. And I'm very happy to do that. You just have to demonstrate to me how you attempted to find that code. That way I can see the effort, and then I will support your effort and help you understand how to do it. When questions are asked in discussion board and I can answer them publicly, everybody can see how we came to an answer. If you have a question, it's a very good chance that the other online students have the same question. Here's the grade range for this course, which I think shouldn't surprise you. It's the same for all HIT courses. I've already mentioned the exercises have an answer keys, and this is just kind of explain that a little bit more. It's a two-step process. If you've been in any of my courses, I often use answer keys in this way. It's good to keep your textbooks, as you prepare for the national exam, and if you decide to go on and take the CCS exam a little bit later. But just remember that unlike the textbooks, your code books are updated annually and would contain the most recent coding guidelines. So when you're studying for, especially your coding exam, if you decide to go forward with the CCS exam, you will need to get the most recent so that you have the guidelines. Word again about coding guidelines. In the ICD-10 courses, the guidelines are pretty much at the beginning of the chapters as well as at the very beginning of the code book. CPT is a little bit different. There are guidelines in front of the individual chapters, or the sections as we call them in the CPT book, but there's also lengthy notes throughout the CPT code book that pertain to codes around them, either in front of them or behind them, that are sprinkled throughout the CPT book and are more lengthy in many cases than the ICD-10 code book. The ICD-10 coding guidelines to me are more concise, whereas the CPT coding guidelines are more narrative. There's a lot more words to read. And I talk here about the answer key and how your answer key is interpreted. If you've taken the ICD-10 course with me, where I used answer keys, is very similar, where you have a diagnosis or a coding scenario on the far left, the codes that are assigned in the middle, and then the far right is the pathway and the rationale. Now, in the case of CPT, it would be the index pathway and any rationale, any coding guidelines or instructions that help you choose a code. And under academic integrity, I just reiterate what I've said already about the importance of showing an effort. Just remember, when you grade your document, once you've had the answer key in hand, to correct your document in such a way that I can see what you've corrected. For example, I don't care if you use a red font, a purple font, a green font, something to show me a differentiation between what you originally had and what the answer key is showing. When I review your submissions, that helps me to know which exercises are giving the students more problems. So it just helps me as a teacher to be better prepared in the future to help students understand those things. As I mentioned earlier about discussion board, I don't have any exercises on discussion board. I use discussion board in this course as a visual tool for the students to learn from one another when questions are asked and explanations given. If you post a request for help in a coding exercise, you have to show me the path that you attempted to find the code. And that way I'll know where in the process you might need a little bit more help. If you're not comfortable asking questions in a public forum like a discussion board, you are welcome to call me or email me, but you still have to tell me the path that you've attempted to find the code. Under due dates here, assignments are accepted up to 1 week past the due date, but there's a 2-point deduction for each day an assignment is late. If you know ahead of time that you're not going to be able to complete an exercise on time and you give me a heads up, you can request an extension as long as it's reasonable. Coming to me after the fact and asking for an extension, you may not be successful. There's a syllabus quiz that you should take today after you've completed watching this syllabus podcast. Missed exams may be taken for 1/2 of the original point value, but only up to 1 week late. Then I go into the assignment of an incomplete. If you are thinking that you can ask for an incomplete, these are the stipulations for how that is awarded. And I make a point that if you are repeating a coding course, you may be given different exams than your classmates. There should not be any unfair advantage to one student over another as far as exams. I talk about academic ethics here, the fairness, accommodations for disabilities, and there's a lot of contact information for campus resources. That's all I have for the syllabus. If you have any questions, you can post them in discussion board or email me or call me. Thank you so much and have a good day.